We're working to make lives better. I sincerely believe that a purpose-driven life is a happy life. And so the question is, can you find your purpose in your work? I'm going to start with my story. In 1979, I was working in Los Angeles, specifically at a Episcopal church of all places in Beverly Hills. It's called All Saints Church. I'd never been inside an Episcopal church before. There was a opportunity that came to me as a grad student at University of Southern California to serve as a youth pastor part-time in this church. And I took the job. I really didn't have anything else going on. I was looking around for the next thing. I had been doing youth work, college student work with an organization called United Ministries in Higher Education on the campus of University of Southern California. That started in '78, continued for a year. My biggest financial supporter doing that was a guy named John Neighbor, an Olympian who got 4 gold medals in the 1976 Olympics. He believed enough in me to write a check to this organization for $15,000 to help support me. So I took this position and was paid, I think it was $400 a month. I got like $100 a week to be a youth director to high school and college kids at All Saints. As I was getting to know people, I went on a leadership retreat with what they call the vestry in the Episcopal Church, Board of Deacons, and most other churches that you're familiar with. And I had gotten to know the senior vestry guy. Turns out this fellow, Ed Borchert, and his wife, Wendy, were very, very well connected, old Los Angeles money. Ed asked me what I wanted to do with my life, because you're not going to make a career out of this, are you? And I said, no, I'm looking for a job. He said, have you ever thought about commercial real estate? And I said, what's that? I literally had never thought about real estate in any form or fashion, let alone commercial real estate. And he introduced me to the idea of properties that produce revenue, income. And he said, I got somebody I want you to meet. This was one of those conversations that I think many of us have a point in our life where we can look back and say, you know, if that conversation had not happened, my life would not be what it is today. That was one of the most pivotal conversations of my life. And I honestly believe that all of us have those conversations potentially nearly every day if we're on the lookout for them. That's the key. Are you waiting for a sort of destiny moment to arrive in your life where you can answer a call? This was definitely a call. So I had breakfast with this guy who was exiting Grubb & Ellis to become a condo developer on Wilshire Boulevard. He was developing high-rise condos that were selling for the ridiculous price of $200 a square foot in 1979. Let that sink in for a moment. He introduced me to the guy who was leading the office for Grubb & Ellis, and they hired me with no license, no knowledge of the industry, and they sort of threw me into the mix because they didn't have to pay me anything. I was a straight commission guy for 7 months. I starved and was living with an elderly woman in the hills above Sunset Boulevard. I moved out to the valley about a year after that, but started my career commuting from Brentwood, California, into Sherman Oaks. They threw me out into the industrial market in the northeast corner of the valley, which was actually the most dangerous part of the San Fernando Valley. Nobody wanted to work it. There are bars on all the windows. There's a reason why they call it the barrio. No, that's not related. It just dawned on me. It's a very, very funny joke, and you're not laughing. But I worked the barrio. I really knocked on doors, and I decided that I was having a lot of fun trying to figure out how to get into these businesses. Saw it as a challenge. Didn't mind the rejection. 9 out of 10 cold calls were rejection. But 1 out of 10 became really gratifying, and I would get to know the owners of these small businesses in Pacoima and Sun Valley and Sylmar and all these little towns that you've never heard of. That's how I got my career started. A deal fell into my bank account finally after working on it, what seemed to be an infinite number, and then another one, and then another one, and then I was kind of hooked. I became a deal junkie, and most of you know today, if you know me at all, that I'm still a deal junkie. So first real estate deal got done in Castaic, California. We bought this truck stop, rezoned it, and flipped it for double what we paid for it, and moved here, took this position with what was then NAI, Carolinic Realty, exchanged some of that money from California into an industrial building in Garner. The path I took into the industry was classical brokerage, started in industrial, doing leasing, then I got to do a sale or two, and then left. Came here, started working on the NCNB real estate portfolio, which happened to be a very large portfolio of buildings being developed by the NCNB Real Estate Fund. This was back when banks were doing speculative development of business parks and office buildings and apartment communities. It's quite a different day. In 1987, when we started Anthony Company, this sign is the actual sign that hung behind the reception desk at 1600 Glenwood Avenue, which was our first leased office space. So this guy followed us around to all these different offices, and we were moving about every year because we kept growing. And then we started buying stuff. So in 1989, we did our first major acquisition. We acquired from Chemical Bank. The office market had tanked. Everything was selling for cheap. And we bought that property for $50 a foot and got all this extra land around it. And then we sold off the parcels around the property. And we are still owners of actually the largest owners in the apartments that sit behind Campus North to this day. But we used 1031 money to buy all these other properties that came out of that one. We bought Allenton Commercial. That was a company owned by my former roommate's father in 1998. We took on their name, called it Anthony Allenton for a little while, and then we dropped the Allenton name when we closed the Allenton business. And then we affiliated with, shortly after that, with Encore International. We pursued an affiliation to become more networked across the country and the world. In 2010, we became part of Colliers, but all the while we were building a little development division that was actually doing more and more business and becoming a real player in the market. And we built a fair number of projects. Lakeview was our biggest. We built the little building behind what used to be the Circuit City. It's now Container Store, thank you. We built that little building behind it, sold it off as condo units. We built an office building that was 56,000 square feet in Durham that we pre-leased a floor to. We sold that building, bought the Nortel Training Center, 180,000 feet on Corporate Center Drive. Built that out for the North Carolina judicial system, and then they bought it from us in 2009. Then we shut down that development business when the great financial crisis came along in 2010. We took what was a team of probably 5 or 6 people, closed it down because there was clearly nothing was going to go on for a while because the banking crisis was that severe. But we continued to sort of invest. Starting really back in 2013 is when we started deploying capital to buy properties again. We accelerated that pace. So since then, we've relocated to this building. We started our development business, restarted the development business in probably 2018, maybe 17, somewhere in that range. We made a good hire at the recommendation of Jim Flink with Wayne Hightower to help us move some projects forward. So we rebranded the company after leaving Colliers in 2020, and we became really 2 companies side by side, APG Advisors, the advisory group, AKA brokerage, and APG Capital, which is both development and investment. And property management also is in the advisory group. We realized that that was kind of cumbersome and a bit confusing to the marketplace, so we merged the identities last year to APG companies. And so that is where we stand today, and we have divisions within the company under that umbrella, which are separately incorporated entities that operate as profit centers unto themselves. APG Ventures is the organization that it's not a formal thing, it's just the stuff that we do that's affiliated but is not core business. Core values and mission. There probably ought to be a comma, by the way, after putting God's gifts to work. We're working to make lives better. And it's so important that that framework be central to why all of us come to the office each day. I sincerely believe that a purpose-driven life is a happy life. A life that does not have a core purpose is a meandering, frustrating, empty life. Personal opinion. And so the question is, can you find your purpose in your work? And I hope that each of you can say, yes, I experience God's pleasure, as Eric Liddell says in the movie Chariots of Fire. You know, why do you run? Because I experience God's pleasure when I run. I feel the blessing and the smile of God when I'm running. And I would hope that everybody in this organization would have that same experience when they show up at work. Whether you're serving tenants in buildings that have their own daily issues, everywhere you turn, there is some human activity that you can contribute good to. And that is what gets me out of bed every day, is the recognition that we are building places where people can have jobs, where they can have housing, where they can have wealth building, where they can have the fulfillment that God desires for every one of our lives. And if that is the foundation on which we go to work, then we go to mission when we're at work. That's what I hope all of you can experience. Now, there's a mental shift that we all have to take, because this is not how most of us were trained. I got to tell you, I was not trained to think this way. It was not natural for me to come to these conclusions. It required some intervention for me to get my head straight on why I work. We, as a company, have discovered that if we live purposefully and we can give you an opportunity to experience a sense of purpose in your work, whether it be directly through your day-to-day activities and recognizing that you can touch people's lives. You know, people need money, but they also will talk to you about what's going on in their lives, and you have an opportunity to speak truth and love into people's lives. That happens every single day if we're listening. And I want to be a place that encourages you and how to do that. We have a lot of success stories we could talk to you about, but I want to invite you to go to the website. Mike Prather, he did a review of our website, every page of it, best we can tell. And he got really familiar with the company through the website. It's very possible there's many folks in this room who have not read much of it at all. And I would encourage you to go through it page by page, because there's a lot you can learn about both our history and what it is we're working on today, as well as our success stories from our storied history. And let's talk about kind of where I see the company going. We have been blessed this year and avoided the troubles that have faced most of our competition The reason we have done well is because of our investment and development companies. And we have not sold under any duress. There's never been pressure for us to sell. We've just sort of had opportunities show up where people have been willing to pay us what we feel is either at or even above market purchase prices. That has been a strategy that has helped us move forward. We have a lot of 1031 capital that's parked right now, and we've got some other pending deals like Auction Direct that will unlock a lot of resources for us to do more aggressive buying. And we'll continue to retain and grow a strong advisory team that includes property management as well as the transaction side of the business. So those are our two core businesses, advisory and investment. And when we see an opportunity to get involved in development, what will probably happen is we'll team up with other developers to make those things happen. Instead of taking on the overhead to build an apartment community, we'll join up with some existing apartment developer and let them kind of run the project with us as a significant partner. Same with any other types of development activities we might undertake. So that's kind of our future plan, is to continue to become a bigger presence in the investment and development space and feed our other businesses with that pipeline. I just want to close by saying how honored I am that any of you would choose to spend the majority of your waking hours with me and with us. It needs to be time that is rewarding on multiple levels. It's got to go beyond a paycheck from my perspective, and I hope you would agree. I hope that we can be a place where you experience purposeful work, purposeful living, and purpose realization. It's God's will for you, and therefore it's our will for you.